is everyone hears a sonic boom and they think that there's an explosion in the city, and so like literally it'll like topple the 911 network because all those people are calling in saying that there was an explosion in their neighborhood. And then from a domestic standpoint, within the Air National Guard, the other role, the F-15, is homeland defense, and that's not just F-15s; that'd be F-22s, F-16s as well within the Guard. Staying alert, waiting for a horn to go off, and potentially scrambling to the jets, getting airborne, and getting airborne into who knows what. Could be the next 9/11, could be a drug runner, it could be a person with an emergency. So that domestic mission is also very dynamic and interesting about protecting the skies over the U.S.
Yeah, it's funny. My cousin, he lives up in Philly, and he sent me some pictures this past weekend. And well, he's some national park, and just a bunch of vipers were raging overhead. And president was up there, so I think there was like 4 or 5 guys that violated the TFR flying around, so they got intercepted. That's peace. That's the alert mission, and obviously in those scenarios, it was pilots who were just completely clueless that there was a temporary flight restriction. They violated it, and then the police. I say that with air quotes. I guess it's on camera now. I can say it with air quotes. Showed up right and escort those guys. But like you said, it could be the next 9/11. It could be someone with hostile intent, and it's there to protect the homeland. So can you talk to me a little bit about the alert mission? Like how often, like you as a line fighter pilot in the squadron, do you have to sit alert a month? What does that day in the life of look like an alert pilot?
Yeah, well, it'll sort of depend on the unit that you're with, as far as how often you do it and what that schedule looks like. Every unit's going to be a little bit different. For my particular unit, our alert site is not co-located with our actual like day-to-day squadron airport and everything like that. And so, because we have to travel, we go to alert, and due to some COVID changes as far as mitigating COVID exposure and that kind of stuff, right now we will sit 7 day alert tours. So we'll go TDY down to our alert facility. We'll be there for 7 days. And what that essentially means is you are in this compound, sort of a base within a base, that you're not allowed to leave. So you get groceries for the entire time you're there. And you're just sort of hanging out, working out, catching up on email, watching movies, just sort of occupying your time in sort of this white collar prison, if you will, and just waiting for a horn to go off. So I describe it to people often as a firehouse for fighter pilots. So everyone is sitting around, and you're there 24/7 for those 7 days. And if at any moment a horn goes off, you and the other pilot and the maintainers that are there will go out and get your jets airborne as quickly as possible. And you have no idea what you're taking off into. It could be a foreign military, it could be a civilian issue, it could be a terrorist attack, it could be all sorts of things out there. And so you always got to be ready for whatever those things are. And that's sort of how our unit works. For other units, and probably a little bit more typical, is that their alert facility is going to be co-located with their actual guard base. And so now, if you think about it, you have all your jets that you fly with on a normal basis for training, and then there'll be a couple of jets that'll be loaded up with live missiles and a live gun that will be sort of set aside for the alert mission. You'll have a couple of pilots that'll sort of be on alert status, and if the horn goes off, those are the two pilots that'll go out there and take off. But they're also more than likely swapping out on a daily basis or every couple of days, keeping it a lot more, I don't know, routine, I guess, and not so much burden on the family as far as being gone for 7 days at a time. We're not doing it that often though for 7 days. I mean, for us spreading out among the squadron, we're looking at maybe one 7 day tour for the quarter. And then for our part-time guys, because with the guard, you also have a bunch of guys that are civilian employees, so they have their civilian obligation first before they can come do the military stuff. And so for those guys, they're doing it quite a bit less. They might sit one alert tour, per half of a year, so maybe two alert tours total for the year, but the majority of it's picked up by the full-time guys.
Gotcha. You mentioned it's kind of like being in the firehouse, but I would like to maybe dive into just what that entails because I don't know if people necessarily understand the fact that it could be 3 o'clock in the morning, that alarm goes off, and then a very short period of time later, you could be going supersonic, going to chase someone down. So from the time the bell goes off to the time you're airborne, what is happening there? And then once the wheels are up, like how are you getting the information you need, and what does that look like? What are you doing to manage the formation?
Yeah, so like you said, the horn could go off at any moment. There's actually inside the alert facility, there's almost like a stoplight set of lights in there, red, yellow, and green, and you'll have a very loud horn that'll wake you up no matter what you're doing. And then you just go look at whatever color the light is, and that light will tell you essentially what you're going to do. If you get a green light, it is you are getting inside that jet as quickly as possible. So you might go from being dead asleep to no kidding, going and putting a flight suit on and putting your boots on and your G suit and all your crap, and you have no idea what the deal is. And you're not really getting a whole lot of information because you don't have time to get that information. Your job is to get that jet airborne as quickly as possible. And so you're going from zero to very fast. And it could be a disorienting kind of experience. But once you get the jet up, now you're taking several minutes of frantically trying to get strapped in and getting all your systems on and everything working and having a safe jet. And then once you sort of realize that you have a safe jet, you might be able to sneak in a radio call here or there to figure out a little bit about what's going on. But even that's going to be very limited information as far as what's going on, as far as why you're scrambling. It's really going to be more of where the aircraft is located that you're going to go intercept. And so that at least gives you an idea of how far out you're going and that kind of stuff. And so once you get airborne, now you're going, as fast as you can to get to that target. And depending on what's going on, that might be authorized to go supersonic, which will happen on occasion. But if you do, it creates a pretty big impact on the cities below. So we've had several instances where we've had to scramble and go supersonic, and then like the chaos it causes afterwards is everyone hears a sonic boom and they think that there's an explosion in the city, and so like literally it'll like topple the 911 network because all those people are calling in saying that there was an explosion in their neighborhood, and it's really just jets overhead trying to go intercept some airplane that shouldn't be where they're supposed to be or whatever the case is. So um, anyway, and then once you get there, who knows what the situation is? It could be, again, a disruptive passenger in an airline, and your job is to make it so the airline passengers never see that you're there. It could be a drug runner, it could be a person in distress. We've had people that passed out when they're flying, and so you have essentially what they consider a derelict object, someone that isn't in control of the airplane. They've passed out due to hypoxia, whatever the case is, and the airplane's just on autopilot, and you're essentially there following it around, making sure that it doesn't all of a sudden run out of gas and sort of dive bomb into a big city or something like that. And so that part of it is always a little of, how creative can you get will be sort of the scenario that you might find yourself in.
Yeah, I mean, if you watch the news, there's everything from the guy who just didn't know there was a TFR there to, I mean, Payne Stewart's a really famous, former passed away golfer, right? Who's, jet, they all became hypoxic and they crashed. And then I know I've heard one, I guess, past 2 years down the East Coast where I think it crashed in the Bahamas, but yeah, I think they said they were hypoxic and passed out just on autopilot till it ran out of fuel. So you just
Yeah,
never know what you're walking into.
yeah, we were. I know exactly which one you're talking about. We
Yeah.
were we were
Okay.
part of that one.
Yeah, so I think all the guys down the coast were just passing off as you went. So again, you don't know what you're walking into. I guess much like a firefighter or a police officer. But I know the heart rate's got to be going fast, and it definitely could be a very dynamic and stressful situation. And again, one that can be pretty unforgiving if you're doing that in the middle of the night and you just woke up. I think.
Yeah, there's actually a funny story that you might appreciate from your air show circuit. So the very first time that I ever got scrambled was down at Alert, and there was an air show going on, and so we actually climbed up to the roof of our Alert facility because you can't leave the facility when all this stuff's going on, and we're on like one extreme end of the base. And the Thunderbirds are about to fly, and so we're like, oh, let's go check it out, and we go sit on the roof and watch it. And one of the maintainers like climbs up the ladder, and he's like, "Hey, sir, we got a phone call. It's EADS or Eastern Air Defense Sector wants to talk to you." So I pick up the phone, and they're like, "Oh, hold on a second." They put me on hold, and they put me on hold to hit the klaxon to have the horn go off. I'm like, "Oh my god, you could have just told me on the phone." And so I scramble to the jet. It's the first real. I'm a lieutenant at the time, so my biggest thing is I just don't want to screw up. And you know this from being a firefighter. Like
Yeah.
one of your biggest motivation is just not looking like an idiot among your bros and your
Yeah.
peers. And so now I'm scrambling to the jet, trying to get all my crap on and get in the jet and get started. And I was really proud of myself because I actually cranked the engine before my flight lead, who was an '06 colonel I was sitting with. And I'm like, I'm gonna be ready before him. This is awesome. But then something happened to my jet, and I had to ground abort the jet because there was an engine issue when I started the second engine. And so now it is total chaos because now I have to go to a spare. The horn is still going off or the green light's still flashing. And so I got to get airborne, but now I got to start all over, get all my crap out of the jet, go over to the spare, and then hop in and get started. At this point, my flight lead has already taxied out and he's blasted off, and I am several minutes behind him, which now has you completely frazzled because you don't want to be the guy that's not getting airborne for the scramble. And so I eventually, get back in there and get all that stuff going on. Well, meanwhile, as all this is going on, it stops the whole air show. And so the air boss or whoever the announcer is now announcing to like these 100,000 spectators that there is a real world scramble going on. And he announces that we're F-16s, which was a little bit insulting at the time. But he's basically doing like the hey, from the left, the Air National Guard on an alert scramble, and there's actually a YouTube video there. It's pretty funny because you see 100,000 heads all turn to the left to watch my flight lead take off, and then they all sort of snap back after the first one, looking for the second one, and they don't realize that I'm like scrambling just to get the damn thing started and super frazzled. And so finally I get the second jet started. The radar is not working. I'm not in the Link 16 because the crypto dumped. And so I'm just basically clued out. Just want to get airborne. Finally take off. We go intercept this airplane. As soon as the airplane sees that there's two fighters off its wing, it immediately starts talking to air traffic control. They sort of tell us to skip it, and we're done for the day. Like an easy intercept with all that chaos on the ground. And now, as we're told to RTB back to the field, the Thunderbirds are now flying. They're now doing their thing. And so, sort of the cool thing is they told us to hold outside the airspace, and we're watching the Thunderbirds with all their smoke on and everything like that from like the above. We're basically holding right above them, looking down at them doing their air show, which is sort of cool. But the Thunderbirds were also like the main attraction for that particular air show. And so now the air
Yeah.
boss has these two fighters that are still airborne after the Thunderbirds land. And so as we're basically coming up to initial, you get, whatever our name was at the time, and the air boss comes in, and I think our call sign was Lucky 2-1 or something like that. Lucky 2-1, this is air boss. You guys are cleared as fast as you want up initial. Typically, we go up initial at 300 knots. He's just giving us the approval to go as fast as we want because you got 100,000 people that want to see a show. And my flight lead is like, copy that. And then about 3 seconds later, he comes back and he's like, Lucky 2-1, you are cleared as fast and as low as you want to go. And here I am as this lieutenant, and I'm like, this is going to be awesome. Like, there's going to be so many videos
America.
of us doing, yeah, America. And it turns out when you're flying with an '06, he tends to follow the rules. And so we went right up initial at 2,000 feet and 300 knots, pitched out. It was the most terrifying landing I've ever had because of all these judging eyes watching. But anyway, that was my first alert scramble. It was terrifying, mainly out of fear of just screwing up in front of a lot of people.